Today I want to show you a way you can use Active Track to get perfect or near perfect drone shots every single time. Active Track is great, and I use Active Track a lot, and it's especially useful for when you're filming yourself doing an activity and you don't want to look like you're actually flying a drone. So Active Track can be used if you're walking in a location like this or you're just enjoying an area. Active Track is great. One of the favorite ways I use it is a point of interest mode like you see here, where I'm just using it to film myself as I get set up for doing this particular video or anything like that. I also use waypoints a lot, but not every drone has waypoints. And so today I want to show you how you can use Active Track as a way to sort of cheat and get some really great footage of yourself in areas, but also not look like you're necessarily filming yourself with a drone. One of the ways to use Active Track that gets overlooked a lot is using it to film static subjects and giving yourself nearly perfect orbits or movements around objects, whether you're filming something like real estate, or in my case, I'm gonna go film this rock here and show you what I mean. Doing a manual orbit is really difficult. It's something that takes a lot of practice, and I totally think you should work on getting that skill because it's a great skill to have. But if you're in a hurry or if you just want to make sure you get a really good orbit, then using something like Active Track makes it a whole lot easier. So I'll show you what I mean. Got the this little stone tower nicely lined up here. Just going to orbit around these rocks, and so there you go. And even there you can see that I'm kind of wobbling or waffling back and forth on the rocks a little bit. So now what I want to show you is exactly how you can Active Track something like this, and it gives you a much easier way to orbit. So we're going to select that as our subject, and that's all we're going to do. It's just selected, and now all we really have to do is push the sticks one way or another and it will track around the object. So you see here, all I'm gonna do is push the stick to the left. And it's now doing a perfect orbit at pretty much any speed around this object. Now, one caveat to this is that you do need enough contrast for the drone to actually see the object clearly against the background. So if you're doing something like a black rock against a black background, it's not gonna work so well. But if you have enough contrast, this makes it really easy to get some really nice movements and nice motions. So you might be thinking, well, you're basically just doing point of interest mode. You're just orbiting around stuff. And that's true. And I use point of interest mode a lot. And if that's all you're going to do is orbit around something, then point of interest mode works great. But the power of using Active Track as a way of tracking or keeping your subject in frame while you're flying the drone actually comes in when you're doing a more coordinated movement that would ordinarily take something like, say, you're going to orbit to the left and then also go up in altitude while moving your gimbal down to keep your subject in frame. That takes a lot of coordination. I totally think you should learn it, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to be able to coordinate that move and get it down perfectly. But with this, using Active Track, you really only have to worry about moving the drone around. It takes care of all the gimbal movement for you. It takes care of a lot of the tracking and movement of rotating the drone as you're moving around something. So for example, here around this rock, as I'm moving around it, you can see all I do is select the rock and then start flying the drone. And that keeps the rock or that point of interest exactly where we want it in the frame. I'm not having to move the gimbal, change the altitude, rotate the drone, move the drone left or right, or anything like that, all coordinated together. All I'm doing is moving the drone where I want to move the drone, and you get this spectacular parallax effect. Now I'm going to show you some other examples here, and one way this is really useful is in real estate. And so if you're going to be filming houses or especially non-moving objects, it makes it really simple and really easy to get very nice shots of the real estate. When you select the subject, just like I'm showing you here, and then just gently fly around that subject, around that house or whatever you might be filming. But it also works with things like boats, it works with things like cars. It's just a really useful way to get tracking, but not have to have the drone do everything, but also not have to have you do everything. So it takes some of the burden off you, where you can think more about flying and let the drone keep the subject in frame. But there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind when you're using this. One, you've got to have a fairly good contrast ratio between the surrounding area and the subject. Otherwise the drone will have a hard time, like I showed you on the black rock out there. It'll have a hard time seeing exactly what your subject is and what it isn't, because Active Track is somewhat based off contrast using the visual that is coming through the sensor, through the camera. So having more contrast is better, and it definitely helps the drone perform better. The great thing is that because Active track is now a part of most DJI drones, the Mini 3 Pro, the Air 2S, the Mavic 3, the Mavic 3 Classic. You can use this feature in almost any of the drones that have active track to be able to get some really cool and really creative shots without having to concentrate too much on how you're flying the drone, but you can still get really nice shots. You're going to want to watch this video here next to learn 7 pro drone moves that I use in pretty much every single time I go out to film anything with drones. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream, which happens most Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.